CNN has learned that Mitch McConnell and the president's allies are working hard behind the scenes to convince Republicans that new witnesses would extend the trial indefinitely. And that's the same message the White House is sending as well. They are threatening to exert, the president is, to exert executive privilege on every new witness or document. So today, House prosecutors will focus on the obstruction of Congress case against the president. Tomorrow, Mr. Trump's legal team gets its turn. Joining us now is one of the jurors. He is Republican Senator John Barrasso. Good morning, Senator.
Thanks for having me, Allison.
Great to have you. I know you guys have had late hours. I know you have busy days, so we really appreciate it. So let's start here. What new information have you learned from the House manager's presentation?
Well, in some ways, it's like Groundhogs Day. About every hour and a half, they start over again. I think one of the interesting things yesterday afternoon, they deviated from that by spending so much time talking about Vice President Joe Biden and the money that his son Hunter was given by a Ukrainian company under evaluation for corruption, to the point that this morning in the New York Times, the headline on the front page was that the case has taken a risky turn yesterday by so much focus and discussion about the Bidens, even in Adam Schiff's closing statements last night.
I think that part of what they were talking about was the corruption of the prosecutor who had been in charge, and that then Vice President Biden had, along with allies, effectively gotten rid of, and that then he suddenly came back to the fore with President Trump. But I want to get back to what you were saying originally. So you think it's repetitive in Groundhog Day. So you've learned nothing new? I mean, that would suggest that you watched all of the hours of the House impeachment case. Were you able to do that? Were you able to read all of the transcripts before now?
What I'm saying, Allison, is that some of the videos that they've been playing for this, the third day, they have played, I think Fiona Hill, I think, must have seen one of those videos 5 or 6 or 7 times. And I think, for most senators, after they see something a couple of times, they don't need to see it 6 times. I understand that a lot of these arguments are being made for people at home who can't watch all day long, but I trust those people at home. I would say, let the voters decide. The last guest you just had on, Representative Deming, who is one of the managers, she has said the evidence is overwhelming. We heard Jerry Nadler saying they have a mountain of evidence. It's rock solid evidence. I think that after we hear the House, after we hear the White House make their case the next 3 days, then we're going to have 16 hours of time to ask questions. All of the senators can ask those questions. We're then going to vote. Do we need additional information? Do we need to hear from new witnesses? Or should we move to a final decision?
And what's your feeling about that?
Well, I want to hear what the White House says in their defense. I want to hear the 16 hours of questions. But if the case is overwhelming by the House, and this is about removing the President of the United States, the most serious decision I think that the Senate would ever be asked to make, then we may know that we've had enough. People can make their own decisions. But if those people say, no, I need even more information, then you can bring in a number of witnesses, and there's a list on both sides.
Yeah, and you're open to hearing from witnesses.
Well, I'm open to take a vote after 3 or 4 more days of hearing testimony and asking and answering questions to say, do we need more information, or can we go to final judgment at that time?
Case in point, let's just break it down for people at home so that we can be specific. For instance, do you know enough about that August 29th cable from Ambassador Bill Taylor? He was so alarmed, he says, by what he was seeing, that he sent a cable, which he'd never done before, to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, about the aid. Do you know enough about that cable?
I know enough about the situation in Ukraine, having been there 3 times, having been there when the Russian helicopters landed in Crimea to take Crimea. I know about the incursions. I've been to meet with the freedom fighters in eastern Ukraine. I know enough about how the Obama administration has withheld aid for years. And now the President of the United States has done much more for the people of Ukraine than any previous administration.
But in terms of
I know a
holding
lot
the
about
aid,
situations.
do you know what so alarmed Ambassador Bill Taylor? Because that's one of the things that Chairman Schiff was talking about, that you could get the answer to what was so alarming Bill Taylor, that he sent a never-before-done first-person cable to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. So about that, would you like to know more?
Actually, the House manager in the last segment said The evidence already is overwhelming. If the evidence truly is overwhelming that the House has brought forward, then everybody ought to be able to vote immediately on that evidence alone and don't need any more information. This is the case that's being presented by the House.
But they're also saying
the House
that,
did
you know, that
was
the
rush
House wants
this.
to hear from witnesses and more documents. They've also said that repeatedly. So wouldn't it be helpful to have all the information?
You know, Allison, what this is about, and Chuck Schumer's been pretty out front about it. This isn't about removing the president. It's about Chuck Schumer trying to become the majority leader in the United States Senate. He has targeted specific members of the Senate. He has attacked the Senate, the process, the senators, running commercials against them. That's what so much of this is about. It's not just about removing the president. It's about trying to defeat 4 Republican senators who are going to be running in 2020. So he is the majority leader. He said so much in the New York Times.
So you think that everything that is happening in the Senate is about Chuck Schumer, not about why aid to Ukraine was held up?
Oh, much of it is, absolutely. This is an effort by the Democrats to take control of the majority of the United States Senate. It's about the 2020 election. I would say let the voters decide. Voting starting next Monday in Iowa, in New Hampshire the week after that. People are going to have a chance to vote in November for the president. Adam Schiff said that the 2016 election wasn't legitimate and the 2020 election isn't going to be legitimate. I mean, I don't know who made him the judge and the jury on all of these things. I have much more faith in letting the American voters decide. This is an election year, and what they're doing now is interfering, I believe, with the election process, not only for president, but also for the United States Senate.
Well, I mean, in terms of voters and what they've said they want, in terms of polling, they have been pretty unanimous throughout many polls in saying that they do want to hear from witnesses. It's 69% in some polls, it's 70% in other polls. But I want to ask you one last thing about something that one of your Senate colleagues said. This is from Senator Marsha Blackburn. While this was going on yesterday, she tweeted, and I'm not sure that maybe it was during a break. I'm not sure about the time. It was at 4:06 p.m. But she tweeted about Colonel Vindman. And she said, Adam Schiff is hailing Alexander Vindman as an American patriot. How patriotic is it to badmouth and ridicule our great nation in front of Russia, America's greatest enemy? And then she went on to say things that have not been proven about Alexander Vindman. She basically is kind of besmirching him. She's saying that he is friends with the whistleblower. She's saying he's a liberal. She's saying all sorts of things that I don't think she could actually know. But is Colonel Vindman a patriot or not?
Every senator speaks for themselves. She will speak for herself, and you can ask her where that all came from. But I will tell you, in terms of, you had mentioned some polling numbers. CNN's poll says a majority of Americans believe what's happening in the Senate is a fair trial, and only 1 in 3 Americans believe that what happened in the House behind closed doors and by keeping the president's team off the field was a fair process. Only 1 in 3 thought that the House was fair. A majority in a CNN poll say the Senate is fair.
Well, that is great that you have the endorsement of the American people, but they do also believe that in a fair trial, you do hear from witnesses.
Well, the evidence is overwhelming. We've talked about that in the past. This is a little different than what you would talk about a courtroom trial. But clearly, we're going to have a chance to hear from the White House defense. We're going to ultimately make a decision of if we need more information, more witnesses, whether that's Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, the whistleblower, Adam Schiff himself, whether it's John Bolton. You can run a list of names. We're going to have a chance to vote on that because we're using the same process that was used in the Bill Clinton impeachment. And you know, Chuck Schumer voted against all witnesses at that time and actually voted to summarily dismiss the charges. We're going to have a chance to vote on witnesses, but only after we hear the defense from the White House and then 16 hours of questions by the senators. And if the evidence is truly overwhelming, we shouldn't need to hear from anyone else at that time.
Also, Senator, I know that you sit next to Senator Lindsey Graham.
I do.
Where was he during the moment that his archival video was played from 1999?
Well, I'm sure, you know, it's interesting because you don't see the entire Senate chamber. on both sides, this is bipartisan. There are usually about 10 or 11 senators who are standing up against the back walls. Some of these have back problems. Some of these folks have leg concerns. They stand, they stretch. They're in the chamber watching, but they don't necessarily are doing it from their seats.
But so did he see that video of him seeming to say, well, actually, really saying the opposite of what he's saying now?
I talked to him about it. He said, I looked pretty good back then, didn't I? So I know he saw the video.
Okay, there you go. And I also heard you say, just on a lighter note, that you're afraid that Senator Lindsey Graham is going to get you thrown in jail. And why is that?
Well, because every day they start the procedure, say you have to be silent under penalty of imprisonment. And, Lindsey's a talkative guy. I sit next to him, and he has a lot of things he likes to share. And you know how it was back in school, Allison? The teacher blames the guy that's saying shh, shh, but the guy that's actually started it sometimes gets away with it.
I do remember that, Senator. Of course, that begs the question, are people taking this seriously? Are your Republican colleagues who we see have the fidget spinners and all of that, do you sense that people are engaged enough?
People are very engaged, very focused. Sometimes when they play a video for the 6th or 7th time for the benefit of the viewers at home, if we've seen something 6 or 7 times like a TV commercial, you might say, I don't need to see this again. I know what they're doing. But that's what some of this is not really meant for the senators in the gallery, in the chamber who have seen this before. As I said, in so many ways, it's like Groundhogs Day. After about an hour and a half of presentation, they go back and start all over again. And you see that with each of the managers making their arguments. You see it with Adam Schiff. They're really not bringing forth new information. They didn't yesterday, and I wonder if they will today, or it'll just be a rehash of the information that we've already heard. And
we'll see if the president's team brings forth new information or repeats any of their points tomorrow. Well,
they haven't had a chance to even start yet. They haven't had a chance to start.
No, of course. Tomorrow we'll be here watching them begin their case tomorrow. But Senator Barrasso, again, we know it's a busy day for you. Thank you very much for being on New Day.
Thanks, Allison.
Sure.
Two things. First